Russia has effectively derailed preparations for the meeting between Donald Trump and Putin in Budapest. The US president stated that he doesn't want to waste his time and that the summit is postponed indefinitely. Why is Moscow once again testing the patience of the White House chief? What is the Russian dictator really after? And how might events unfold from here? Let's figure it out. It was expected that first, in the Hungarian capital, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov would meet. And then, once all the protocol details were agreed upon, Trump and Putin would fly to Budapest. Basically, this is a standard diplomatic procedure before any high-level negotiations. But after Rubio and Lavrov spoke on the phone, everything stalled. Several reputable publications, citing their sources in the White House, wrote that during this conversation, the Russian minister repeated his old mantra about supposedly addressing the root causes of the conflict and essentially refused an immediate ceasefire in Ukraine.
Neither side has publicly abandoned plans for a Trump-Putin meeting. However, the postponement of the Rubio-Lavrov meeting is being viewed by many as a clear indication that the Americans may not currently wish to proceed with holding the summit as previously planned. Donald Trump, who was at the time serving as President of the United States, addressed this development during a press conference that took place at the White House, where he responded to questions from reporters about the situation.
Confirmed that the meeting is indeed being postponed. The U.S. president put in a lot of effort to organize it. And, of course, he hoped that the summit in Budapest would become an important step toward ending the war. But Moscow is counting on something completely different to stall for time and derail any peace initiative. What does it take to do that? Deny the obvious, manipulate the numbers, and create an alternative version of events. The Kremlin is very good at this, but the world has already learned this tactic all too well. That's why the White House stated they are ready for dialogue if Russia demonstrates a genuine commitment to peace.
No, I don't want to have a meeting for nothing. I don't want to waste my time. So I'll wait and see what happens next. This time I said, go out to the front lines and then come back home. Everyone needs to take a pause. Because right now there are two countries losing between 5,000 and 7,000 soldiers a week. So let's see how this turns out. We haven't made a decision yet.
The Kremlin stated that there is no exact date for the summit in Budapest, since the meeting requires serious preparation. They say a lot of details need to be worked out, from the composition of the delegation to the format of the negotiations. There are no deadlines, and in Moscow they prefer to act without rushing. But let's remember what Donald Trump said on October 16th, right after his phone conversation with Putin. Yes, he did mention a specific date, but he did outline a fairly realistic time frame. So the Kremlin lied even about such details.
I'd say in about 2 weeks, pretty soon. First, Marco Rubio will meet with his colleague, as you know, Lavrov, and they'll meet pretty soon. They will agree on the time and place in the very near future.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky stated that it was specifically the topic of American Tomahawk missiles that became the factor Moscow took seriously. According to him, the discussion of possible deliveries of these systems to Ukraine made the Kremlin show interest in negotiations for the first time in a long while. But as soon as it became clear that Washington had not yet approved the transfer of missile systems, Moscow immediately tried to.
Backtrack now, please.
The front line could become the starting point for diplomacy. Instead, Russia is once again doing everything it can to dodge diplomacy. And as soon as the issue of long-range capabilities became a bit more distant for us, for Ukraine, it almost automatically happened. Russia became less interested in diplomacy. This is a sign that this very issue, the issue of long-range capabilities, may provide an irreplaceable key to peace. The more long-range capabilities Ukraine has, the more willing Russia is to end the war.
There is another reason why the Russians tried to disrupt the summit in Budapest. Several publications have written that Putin is very afraid to fly to Europe. Many of his advisors are discouraging him and suggesting that negotiations be held in the United Arab Emirates instead. After all, for a meeting with Trump in Budapest, the Kremlin dictator needs to solve at least two logistical problems: to avoid arrest under the ICC warrant and to secure the right to fly over EU countries. Poland, for example, has stated that it could force the Russian Federation's primary aircraft to land and arrest Putin under the international warrant.
I cannot guarantee that an independent Polish court would not order the government to escort such a plane in order to hand the suspect over to the court in The Hague. I think the Russian side is aware of this, and therefore, if this summit does take place, hopefully with the participation of the victim of aggression, I expect that Putin's plane will take a different route. Radoslaw Sikorski, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Poland, on Radio Radzina.
Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and the leaders of partner countries jointly supported the White House's position on ending the war. The politicians stated that the fighting must stop immediately and negotiations should begin along the current front line. In their joint statement, they noted that it is precisely Russia's delay that demonstrates its unwillingness to end the war.
We remain committed to the principle that international borders cannot be changed by force. Russia's delaying tactics have repeatedly shown that Ukraine is the only side truly serious about peace. We can all see that Putin continues to choose violence and destruction, so we state clearly, Ukraine must be in the strongest possible position before, during, and after the ceasefire. We must increase the pressure on Russia's economy and its defense industry until Putin is ready. To make peace, from the joint statement of EU leaders and the President of Ukraine.
It seems that Washington has also decided to take action. The U.S. Senate is preparing to consider 3 bills aimed at increasing pressure on the aggressor country. This was reported by the news agency Axios. If the documents are adopted, senators believe this will deal a significant blow to Putin's war machine. And it will force the Kremlin to negotiate a real peace, instead of talking about its appetite for other people's territories.
It is expected that the committee will consider bills, one of which designates Russia as a state sponsor of terrorism because of the abduction of Ukrainian children. The second provides for the introduction of economic sanctions against China for supporting Russia's military efforts. The third concerns the repurposing of frozen Russian assets held in the U.S. and their transfer to Ukraine. From a publication by Axios.
Another massive shelling of Ukraine, the killing of civilians, strikes on a kindergarten and residential buildings. Once again showed how Putin negotiates. Any chance for peace. The Kremlin seeks to destroy with ballistic missiles and drones. As the president of Ukraine emphasized, Russian talk of diplomacy means nothing as long as the Kremlin leadership does not face critical problems. And this can only be achieved in 2 ways: through sanctions against the aggressor and comprehensive support for Ukraine.
Subscribe to UATV English and stay updated on the most important events, top news from Ukraine and all over the world, in-depth analysis, exclusive reports and interviews, all on hand in our channel. Join our community of viewers and stay tuned.